March 2nd, 1955, Montgomery, Alabama. 9 months before the name Rosa Parks would change the world, a 15-year-old girl named Claudette Colvin was sitting on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. The driver stood up, looked her in the eye, and said, "Give up your seat." Most of you were taught that the civil rights movement started with a tired seamstress. But that's not the whole truth. Today, we're going to talk about the girl who did it first, and the reason why the history books, and even the leaders of the movement itself, decided to delete her from the story. Hey folks! In case we haven't met, I'm the digital avatar of Professor Darius. While he's busy in the classroom, I've stepped in to bring the material to you. So, let's jump in. Let's set the scene. It's a Tuesday. Claudette is a student at Booker T. Washington High School. She's just learned about the Constitution. She's learned about her rights as an American citizen. Her head is full of Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth. She boards the Highland Gardens bus, pays her fare, and sits down in the colored section. But the bus starts filling up. Back then, Jim Crow wasn't just a set of laws. It was a psychological cage. If the white section filled up, black passengers were expected, legally required, to stand so a white person could sit. The driver, Robert W. Clear, sees a white woman standing. He looks back at Claudette and 3 other black students. He tells them to get up. 3 of them do. Claudette doesn't move. Think about the primal fear here. You're 15. You're surrounded by people who view you as less than human. The police are on their way. In 1955 Alabama, being a disrespectful black person didn't just get you arrested, it could get you killed. But Claudette told the driver, "It's my constitutional right to sit here as much as that lady. I paid my fare." The police arrived. They didn't just ask her to leave. They dragged her. They kicked her. They called her names we can't repeat on this platform. As they handcuffed her, she didn't cry. She screamed, "It's my constitutional right," over and over again. She was taken to an adult jail. She was terrified. She sat in that cell, praying, listening to the sound of the keys jingling. She was the spark. The fuse was lit. But here is where the story takes a dark, political turn. After the arrest, the black community in Montgomery was electrified. This was it. They had the case. E.D. Nixon, the head of the NAACP, looked at Claudette's case and saw the potential to change everything. But then, the marketing department of the civil rights movement stepped in. To win in the 1950s, you didn't just need to be right, you needed to be marketable. You needed to appeal to the broad sensibilities of white liberals in the North and the Supreme Court justices in D.C. They looked at Claudette. She was a teenager. She was described as feisty and emotional. She was from a lower-income background. And, most importantly to the colorist standards of the time, she was dark-skinned. Then, the unthinkable happened. A few months after her arrest, Claudette became pregnant by a married man. In 1955, this was a death sentence for a social movement's optics. The leaders, including a young Martin Luther King Jr., had a meeting. They decided that Claudette Colvin could not be the face of the boycott. They needed someone who was beyond reproach. Someone middle class. Someone calm. Someone with good hair. They needed Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks was 42. She was a secretary for the NAACP. She was deeply respected. She was, in their words, easy to look at. When she refused to move 9 months later, it wasn't an accident. It was a perfectly executed piece of strategic engineering. But here's the thing history hides. Rosa Parks knew Claudette. She had mentored her. She had even let Claudette stay at her house. The movement used Claudette's bravery as a test run, and then they moved on to the polished version. This is the part that changes everything. If Rosa Parks was the hero, why did the Supreme Court case that ended segregation have a different name? Most people think the bus boycott ended because Rosa Parks won her court case. That is a lie. Rosa Parks' case got stuck in the state courts. It was going nowhere. To actually win, the movement needed to sue in federal court. But they couldn't use Rosa Parks. Why? Because as a defendant in a criminal case, her civil suit would be delayed. So who did they call? Who was brave enough to stand up in a courtroom, face the white lawyers who wanted to destroy her, and testify against the system that had already broken her? Claudette Colvin. Claudette was one of 4 plaintiffs in Browder vs. Gayle. While the world was watching the boycott, Claudette was doing the work that actually mattered. On the witness stand, a white attorney asked her, "If the boycott ended today, would you go back to the buses and sit in the back?" Claudette didn't hesitate. She said, "No. I want to be treated like a human being." On June 5, 1956, the district court ruled that bus segregation was unconstitutional. The Supreme Court later affirmed it. That ruling, the one that actually integrated the buses, was because of Claudette's testimony, not Rosa's. Imagine being 16 years old. You've changed the world. You've won the court case. You've been kicked, arrested, and shamed. And then you watch. You watch as the cameras find Rosa Parks. You watch as she is invited to the White House. You watch as the sanitized version of your struggle becomes the only version anyone talks about. In Montgomery, Claudette was branded a troublemaker. She couldn't find work. She was a single mother in a town that hated her. She eventually had to flee to New York City, where she worked as a nurse's aide for 30 years. She lived in total anonymity. She didn't tell her coworkers who she was. She didn't tell her neighbors. For decades, the woman who sparked the greatest boycott in American history was emptying bedpans in a New York hospital. Why did she stay quiet? Because the primal fear of being rejected by her own community was real. The movement had told her she wasn't good enough, and she believed them. She once said, "I feel that I didn't get my recognition. I was the one who was there when the fire was burning. I was the one who was there when the police were dragging people off." As a strategist, I look at this and see a lesson in packaging. The civil rights leaders applied a rule where they knew the idea was viral. It was remarkable. It passed every test. But they knew the packaging was too different for the algorithm of public opinion in 1955. They swapped the packaging for Rosa Parks, someone who was just different enough from the status quo to make a point, but still safe enough to be accepted. Did the NAACP and the Montgomery Improvement Association that led the boycott make the right choice? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Here is the danger of optimizing for packaging over truth. When we sanitize history to make it more clickable, we lose the raw, primal reality of what change actually looks like. Change doesn't always come from perfect people. In fact, it never does. Change is often messy and complicated. In this case, it came from a feisty, pregnant teenager who was tired of being told she didn't matter. If we only celebrate the polished heroes, we tell every unpolished kid today that they can't make a difference. We tell them their value isn't high enough to change the world. This story didn't come from nowhere. It came from a lineage of resilience that history often tries to erase. For centuries, the black family structure has been labeled broken, but the reality is it is the ultimate story of survival against systemic oppression. In my new book, Legacy of Survival, The Dynamics of the Black Family, we dismantle the lies and explore the truth about how we survived, from the Middle Passage to Jim Crow, and what we must do next. It's time to reclaim our narrative. Click the link in the description to pick up your copy of Legacy of Survival today, available in paperback and ebook on Amazon and the Google Play bookstore. 66 years later, in 2021, Claudette Colvin finally had her record cleared. A judge in Alabama officially expunged her arrest. At 82 years old, she was no longer a criminal. But she was never a criminal. She was a pioneer. We talk about growth and algorithms, but the most powerful algorithm in the world is the truth. It might take 60 years to surface, but once it does, it can't be deleted. So the next time you see a photo of Rosa Parks, I want you to look past the perfect packaging. I want you to remember the 15-year-old girl who was too problematic for the history books. Because the world wasn't changed solely by a tired seamstress. It was changed by a teenager who was brave. If you found this remarkable, hit the like button. It helps the Discovery algorithm find people who need to hear this story. Once again, I'd like to send a huge shout out to the history makers in our Patreon community. You can join them for as little as $1 a month and gain early access to ad-free videos by clicking the link below. And if you want to know about another deleted piece of history that explains why our world looks the way it does, click this video right here. I'm Professor Darius. Thank you for watching African Elements.